Madou Monogatari is a big subject of interest for Puyo fans, regardless how much of the series one has experienced. Justifiably so. It is the original main series of the franchise and where we get a lot of context for the cast, like why Rulu fell in love with Satan. Due to its, for a long time, poor Western documentation and lack of official availability outside of Japan, it has remained niche, with many just hearing about things that happen in it. This also resulted in misinformation and misconceptions. One such misconception I want to possibly clear up is the following: is Madou Monogatari a serious or dark series? This is a common take people have on it, and there are factors that make it understandable. However, I do think the full picture is a fair bit different. What I believe to be the biggest culprit of that perception is, surprising to nobody, the PC 98 versions of Madou Monogatari 1, 2, and 3. The more gory and grotesque imagery of these games doesn't require any introduction to fans of the series, but the truth is, besides that and the art style itself, that really is where it largely ends. The stories are faithful to the source. In fact, PC 98 Madou 1 is the only post-MSX version to have the epilogue of Arl growing up, and a lot of the series' quirkiness is still there. I mean, look at these right here. It's also worth noting that MSX2 Madou 3 also had Arl's Fingers Bleed and Madushi Lulba, another compiled title with notable ties to Madou Monogatari, had this moment of gore, yet both games are recognized as lighthearted. PC 98 Madou 1-3 are far more excessive with that kind of imagery, but that really is just it. I do feel a lot of that perception also comes from concepts on their own. To understand what I mean, I want to discuss Madou 1's premise. A literal 6-year-old being tasked to travel a monster-filled tower on her own, just to pass kindergarten, is an idea that has potential to be something twisted and dark when you just hear about it, but that's not how the game itself plays it at all. The fact you're playing as a literal kindergartner is really just used to complement the general quirkiness of the game, which is reflected in the art and character design too. Madou is a light-hearted adventure, and later versions just kept adding elements that further played into that vibe. A cow-style woman that steals snacks from children and is petty enough to keep appearing as a random encounter, after being beaten by Arl? Now that's goofy. Even the infamous melting classmates scene and Fudushi are in the end a means to empower Arl, since she overcomes her fears and clears her final obstacle, passing the exam. That's Madou 1, and the truth is, with most of the later games, I struggle to even think of too many things that even are conceptually dark. The Saturn game is very in line with the 90s comedy anime. It can have its climactic moments, particularly whenever Lagnus takes center stage, and the lore dump at the very end is interesting, but it's all around very light and joke-why. Many games have nothing I could really point to as especially serious or possibly dark that would support the reputation Madou has. Game Gear Madou 3 and Doki Doki Vacation are so goofy that they practically make a farce out of themselves. Big Kindergarten Kids on SNES swings the complete opposite direction by playing up its adorableness and proudly flaunting it. The remaining ones then are ARS, Final Exam and Madou 2, and the first two of those are what I'd like to call a tonal roller coaster. ARS has one of the darkest concepts in the series by showing how Shizou became a dark wizard, and it is an incredibly intriguing piece of lore to witness for sure. Thing is, Shizou's fight with Rune Lord and his corruption being fully shown to have kicked in, are sandwiched between Rune Lord's doorbell and Shizou being comedically scolded by his teacher. Final Exam is similar. A huge bulk of the game is not serious at all, going for hyper-goofy things like Suke Tadara mentioning the Sega Saturn or Satan paralyzing Arl with bad poetry as if he's an enemy from Earthbound. Once Phantom God enters the scene, things stay fairly serious for a while, with Lilith's appearance creating a lot of intrigue. Right before it's time to face the final boss, you get an incredibly silly Rulu scene, after some time of her fate being left uncertain. After that, you get a final boss and then an ending where the big reveal Shizou isn't dead has Arl forgive Phantom God in a rather casual, silly way, followed by a cute anime credits sequence in chibi style. Both of these, especially Final Exam, are really all over the place, like there was hesitance to let things get too serious. We know for a fact this was to some degree a concern for Compile, given InaKen, who wrote the dialogues for Pocket Puyo Puyo N, talked about cutting a scene before even proposing it, because of concerns Compile would deem it too dark and not fun to watch. Madou Monogatari 2, any version of it, stands as the one game I feel does have something that's in line with the tone people assume Madou to have, in Sheizo's dungeon. It isn't uberly grim, but the design, full of cells everywhere, eerie music for the PC 98 and Game Gear versions, Sheizo's original henchmen, which are totally out of line with the enemy design otherwise seen in the game, and Arl finding a corpse of one of Sheizo's victims in the Game Gear versions, does give the area a suitably sinister vibe. The rest of the game is nothing like this, but this one area does succeed at having the dark vibe people associate with Madou. Good job Sheizo. That said, even this section has something I was very surprised by. As Mejuka informed me, even the Sheizo decapitation is played as a joke, with Arl being more annoyed than anything that Sheizo refuses to stay down, and he even says "Thank you," literally night night, upon defeat. It's hilarious to think this infamously dark moment is played lighter than people realize, but that makes me love it all the more. All that's left to mention is Shin Madou, which I don't have all the details for since I don't speak Japanese and summaries or translations are sparse, but the general gist I get is that most of the dark stuff is in the chronology and not the book stories themselves. Seeing things like Superhero Satan or Sherry, I can easily believe that. You can probably see my conclusion by now that no, I don't think Madou is especially dark or serious, and I am going to take it a bit further and say that Sega Puyo surpasses it quite easily. Compile's Puyo games have all been pure comedy, with even Puyo N only having doppelganger Arl as a mild tone shift, and even her appearance I'd classify more as traditionally climactic, rather than especially serious or dark. Sega Puyo never lost that comedic edge, but with this series now no longer having Madou or spin-offs to establish its lore, it's now all Puyo that has to carry it, and with that comes more intense elements. Take Yu and Rei as an example. While they are cute and Yu is a total, goofy punster, the implications surrounding their deaths, especially the drama track focusing on it, are surprisingly grim. Yu herself, on top of that, has a very dark comedy, happy attitude about trying to kill people, because she thinks everyone would prefer being a ghost. Another example is Ess, who has been explicitly confirmed by writer Utako Yoshino, to be traumatized because of X's disappearance from her life. Her not remembering him is less of a joke and more so her mind repressing any memory he ever existed as a type of self-defense mechanism. Character drama in general is taken more seriously. Sig in particular is characterized as someone so unwilling to bother his friends, that he will swallow his own fears and possibly even endanger himself, as the novel Sig's Secret highlights especially. The series also aims for higher stakes threats now. It's easy to overlook, but most Madou stories are notably small scale and fairly mundane. Arl will save the fairies of a forest from Owl Bear, take her kindergarten exam, or explore some ruins to find a gem she heard of. All of that is pretty in line with the Puyo stories of the time too. Aside from Rune Lord, Yagas, and Dark Matter, the threats faced in Madou games were usually not that drastic. As scary as Fidushi looks, he has no greater context attached to him and may just be part of the exam, and even Phantom God is merely a guardian, who didn't even kill Sheizo, but rather warped him out of the dungeon and only starts to get serious when he believes Arl is truly connected to Lilith. Compare that to modern Puyo, which regularly deals with potentially world-ending threats such as Ecolo, Rafisol, and Squares, that require the entire cast to work together in order to stop them. All of these are played with a lot of gravity and probably the highest stakes any of the games have ever seen. Even outside of final boss scenarios, things get dangerous for the cast a lot. A big example is Strange Clug being so desperate to not return to the book, that he is willing to threaten the lives of the, currently in the bodies of Puyo's Amity, Ringo, Ally, Liddell, and Rafina, by using them for chains, or later on risking to blow himself up with one of 8's inventions, which would also have dire consequences for Clug. That's just 2 examples from Quest, but you can already see what drama and stakes this underutilized character brings to the table when he gets some action. Funnily enough, Even the idea of magic school having the students do outrageous things is still present in modern Puyo. As seen in a drama track, Accord's idea of detention is to have her students fight a Dragon-Popoi. Accord in general is quite something. The point of all this is, Puyo is often accused of watering down the tone of the franchise, but the truth is that Madou and Puyo were never that different and that Puyo has long gone its own way to establish lore and a sense of adventure, with a much more consistent vision. I don't love everything Puyo does, but I do think it is often hit with unfair accusations that come from an untrue perception of what Madou was, especially the Sega side of things. Like, Sega Puyo has a cute style? It sure does. So did Compile. Cuteness has been in the franchise's DNA since the very first Madou release. Madou provides intriguing lore while being very quirky, and I wouldn't have it any other way. To me, that's what makes Madou unique, and that feeling is still present in Puyo to this day. It's all too fitting Madou is still referenced in Puyo to this day, because at the end of it all, they are way more alike than you may think.